What's up, everyone? Nick from Comic Culture here. It's time for Nick at Night, my weekly non-spoiler comic book review show. Just got done reading all my books. I'm going to go over each and every one of them coming up next. Stick around. All right, welcome back to the channel. So it's time for Nick at Night. I'm going to go through all the books I read. I'm going to put the covers up on this grading scale here so you know how each and every one of them stacks up against each other. So let's get into it now with Marvel. We're going to start with Spider-Man issue number 1 from Dan Slott and Mark Bagley. It's the Spider-Man we didn't need. But here it is, and it's actually, I'm having more fun with this one than I am with the main ASM run right now, which is kind of weird because now we have 2 Spider-Man books going on, and I don't really understand why we have 2 Spider-Man books going on. But again, this one was actually pretty fun. It's actually taking place at the exact same time, which is interesting because Peter still works with Harry, and he's got his new suit that he just got maybe a few issues ago. But this one's really weird. It's almost like a fever dream. Peter's kind of like just going around saving the day as Peter Parker, as Spider-Man, and then he gets kind of wrapped into this whole Spider-Verse kind of a thing. It's a very interesting concept. There's this weird multi-dimensional kind of web going on right now, and there's people infiltrating that. There's all these different cameos from all the different Spider-related heroes that we're all familiar with, and looks like they're going to have to team up here very soon to take on this threat that is coming through. Art-wise, it's actually pretty fun. There's a lot of action inside of this issue, and the art kind of changes depending on where they are and what perspective they're talking from. So it's actually a pretty interesting issue. I'll give you an idea what it looks like art-wise in here. This is, Peter just kind of doing Spider-Man stuff in New York City before all hell breaks loose in the issue. So it's a Spider-Man book we didn't need, but it's a Spider-Man book that's actually better than ASM, I think, right now. So we're going to keep going with it and see what's going on with that. How do you guys feel about having 2 Spider-Man books at the same time? And if you read this one, let me know what you thought down below. Next book we're going to get into is Hulk issue number 9 from Donny Cates, and we have Ryan Ottley on here. And it's just kind of your run-of-the-mill Hulk book right now. We're transitioning out of that big Thor battle right now. We're going back out into our main mission, which was essentially exploring different gamma signals that they can kind of pick up while they're in their spaceship flying around. So it's basically them traveling to this new planet they just kind of discovered, and it turns out it's almost like a tribute to Hulk himself, and we do get to meet this monolith character who's on the cover right here as well. We don't really learn a whole lot about her, but she's kind of anticipating Bruce / the Hulk, so that was kind of fun. There was some interesting things about the inner workings of Bruce Banner, like how he split his personality up into the different personnel on the ship that he's created for himself, and there's also some Doc Samson stuff in here too, so if you missed Doc, you get some more of that in here as well. So it's continuing that craziness. If you did not like the Starship Hulk kind of thing and the Bruce Banner multiple personalities, this is more of that, but now we're going to Hulk Planet right now, so maybe we're going to see some more insane action coming up. It's got to be, right? It's got to be coming. So Hulk number 9, it's a setup issue, minor first appearance so far. We don't know the implications of this character yet, but if you've been liking it so far, man, just keep drinking that Kool-Aid. All right, continuing the Marvel train here, we have Captain America, Sentinel of Liberty, issue number 5 from Lansing and Kelly. Interesting premise. This book was pretty fun, I think. It's interesting because basically they took the Captain America shield with the 5 points and the different rings, and they changed the whole meaning behind that. And basically there's this like secret organization who essentially run the entire world. There's 5 points to the star. There's 5 leaders in this organization. They run everything from war to profits to finance to everything, and they've orchestrated everything for the last 100 or so years. And so we meet a little bit more, or we learn a little bit more about those people. We meet a few of them in this issue, and this is basically Bucky and Steve teaming up with Redacted, who's a villain that we met in the first couple of issues of this run, and they're going after these people now to kind of take back the world, essentially. And so if you're into big conspiracy theory, big brother kind of things, you want to see a lot of different villain factions teaming up for one single purpose and fighting Captain America and Bucky and Redacted, this might be a book you might want to check out. It's an interesting conspiracy theory book in general, and the ending of this book leaves us on a little bit of a cliffhanger right now and kind of puts Steve against Bucky, and so I'm interested to see where that story goes. So pretty interesting read so far. I'm liking it. It's like a mid-level Marvel book, I feel like, but like I'm not reading a whole lot of Captain America. and haven't for a while. So this is actually a pretty decent read for the moment. But if you're reading this, let me know what you think down below. All right, so that was actually it for Marvel. We're going to jump over into some DC books next. We're going to start with Sword of Azrael from Dan Waters. This is issue number 3 of 6, and I was almost about to drop this book. In fact, number 3 I didn't realize was on my pull list, and it was, and so I'm like, well, it's a little bit of a light week, so I'll read it and see what's going on, and I'm glad I did. The more I read about Sword of Azrael, especially the Dan Waters stuff, it feels like DC's Moon Knight in a way, right? We have this very religious figure. He's kind of like the Fist, in a way, and so he's kind of inhabited by this being, by this power, by this presence. He could transform into it, and it basically rains down like righteous hellfire, right? And so it's pretty fun from that perspective. So there's a lot of similarities between Moon Knight and Azrael. So I think that's one reason why I'm kind of connecting with it, because I do like the Moon Knight run right now that's going on over in Marvel. But basically, in this story here, we have Azrael. He's kind of meeting these other people who think they're like angels like him. And there's these bad organizations that are trying to kidnap those people and turn them into kind of like their fists, right? Kind of like a Moon Knight kind of a situation. And so he's doing all he can do to help balance all this out, help this girl who's being corrupted right now. And so he's kind of on that mission, but this is a little sidestep right here. He's actually investigating some missing persons in this town that he's in. And then he finds out that there's an old, ancient, basically headquarters for the people who developed him, who made him who he is. And they've got this real evil plan right now to resurrect or build this ultimate angel/demon character. And so he's investigating that. And there's a big battle at the end. So it sounds a little bit complicated, but it's actually a lot of fun. The art style in here is like, there's a lot going on in the art style. It can be really simple and detailed, or it could be really simple and broad. But then when it gets to the action scenes, it's almost like an anime-ish kind of a thing. And so it's really cool. I'll give you an idea of what the art looks like in here. You can see the nice balance between the one side and the other side when the action all breaks loose. So it's a pretty fun, nicely drawn book. It's actually going in a pretty interesting direction. Again, he's trying to save these people from being converted, being turned into something like he is. But he's also exploring like this local thing as well, this local issue. And so all hell kind of breaks loose because of that. So it's actually a pretty fun little read. And now that I'm 3 in and I still like it, there's only 4, 5, and 6 left. So I'm probably going to stick it out. I got to check my poll list, make sure it's still on there. But Sword of Azrael from Dan Waters, not a bad read. I'd highly recommend it. All right, next DC book we read this week was from G. Willow Wilson. We have Poison Ivy issue number 5. And there's a little bit of an art change in here. We have Takara on the back end, but we have somebody else on the front half of this book, Brian Level. Very interesting art style. Reminds me a lot of like, I get like Ice Cream Man vibes from it, but that's probably not completely accurate. Just in like the facial expressions and stuff. Look at this craziness over here. Does that not look like a weird version of the Ice Cream Man in a way, right? So of course the style is totally different, but the vibe is there, right? And so this is actually pretty fun. This issue here explores Poison Ivy's origin. We have Woodrow in here, and so we understand that relationship, that toxic relationship, very much like a Joker Harley kind of a thing. And we have Poison Ivy doing the best she can do to like not lose her crap. She's actually kind of under the influence of this fauna that she has right now, this like infectious fungal infection kind of a thing that she's trying to spread. And she's actually kind of succumbing to it, making her hallucinate, which is hilarious because Batman's part of her hallucinations, and there's a lot of interesting dialogue between the two of them throughout this whole issue, and it adds a little bit of humor. Because this book needs a little bit of humor from time to time because it can get kind of heavy. But yeah, man, this book is really well drawn. The story is pretty good. There's a few moments in a couple of the issues where it kind of drags on or it's somewhat predictable or whatnot. But I think the overall book is actually pretty fun, and I'm just having a blast reading it. And again, the little humor sprinkled in here because of her hallucinations was really, really great. So yeah, we're going to get to the end of this pretty soon, I would imagine. We have a little cliffhanger at the end. We don't quite know what we're going to do. I'm wondering if someone's going to kind of come in to save the day, or if she's going to be able to muster up enough strength, get through her hallucinations, and actually take care of business because she's in a way at the very end of this issue. And so it's been a fun, interesting read so far. A dud here and there. Some of the stories can be a little bit bland or whatever, but I think overall it's a pretty interesting book. I like the little humor that they sprinkled into this one. The art has always been great, so it's I would recommend this one if your polls are a little bit light and you want to check up on some Poison Ivy. You like G. Willow Wilson, check this one out. All right, we're going to jump over into the Crisis event right now from Williamson. We have Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths number 5 of 7. And y'all know me, I'm not a really big Crisis event kind of a guy because I feel like it's all built on top of each other. And if you haven't had the chance to read all those and have a collective knowledge of all the different crisis events, you might not appreciate everything that's going on or all the relationships that have been built over the past. But I jumped into this one relatively cold, reading a little bit of the older crisis events and a little bit of death metal. But this book has been pretty fun so far. It's definitely had its moments where there was some boring stuff going on and some crisis confusion, I would call it. But the ground level stuff has always been really interesting, and I like the different characters that they're introducing in here. It's not just about like Pariah and the Great Darkness and things like that. There's a lot of other things going on in here. And this issue is really the turning point issue, at least explaining what happened to the Justice League. And now we're seeing how we're going to be able to get them back. But is it too late to do that? We explore that inside of this issue. But I would say art-wise, it is pretty interesting when we have those weird multiversal images of all the different worlds. That is pretty fun. A lot of the battles and some of the spotlight moments, some of the close-up character spotlight moments, I thought they were handled really well. There's some pretty cool stuff. I mean, look at this like Green Lantern stuff in here. There's a lot of moments like this in the book, in the series in general, where it's just really cool art-wise, and like the moment feels just kind of exciting, right? And so that's what you really want inside comics. You just want to feel like whatever is going on right now, it's meaningful, it's purposeful, there's excitement to it, it's drawn well. That's what you want in comics. And a lot of the times they're hitting that point. I'm just kind of, not mad that it's wrapped up in a crisis event necessarily. You probably need a crisis event to kind of trigger all these emotions and everything and all these people and get them together at this scale, of course. But was it enough? I don't know. We're going to see. They're not in a great shape towards the end of this book. They're going to have to pull it together and see what they can do. Pretty interesting run. I'm having a good time with this book overall. Again, there's a lot of like single moments that really just stand out to me. The overall event's kind of like, okay, but there's a lot of moments where people just step up and do really, really cool stuff throughout this whole run. So let me know what you're thinking about Dark Crisis if you're reading it down below. All right, and the last DC book we read this week was one of my favorite books, and it's one of my favorite new series right now. It's actually Chip Zdarsky's run on Batman. We have Jorge Ramirez, and we have Mori as well. This is Batman 128, and what a cool book this is. What a great cover this is as well. Once you read the issue, this means a little bit more to us. Obviously, we could infer what something like this would mean, this perspective and this look would mean right here. It's just basically showing the relationship between, Robin and Batman right here, and everything's on fire around them. So it is pretty cool. There's a lot of great character moments in this run. So basically, we have Failsafe. Failsafe, if you haven't been reading, is basically the Batman protocol. Batman has like the Omega Protocol versus the Justice League. How does Batman keep himself in check? Well, he developed at some point Failsafe, and Failsafe basically knows everything Batman knows, and he's a cyborg, and he's very, very hard to beat, and he is wrecking shop right now, beating the hell out of Batman, beating the hell out of the Bat family. Gotham is under siege right now. We have Superman stepping up to the plate. We have some other folks from the Justice League as well, even some of the broader Justice League, to come in and help save the day because Oracle's sending out that SOS at the moment. So this issue is really fun because we have a lot of characters coming in right now to fight these guys, the Failsafe. And we have basically this inner monologue of a broken down Batman talking through the battle, which is really fun. He's like, okay, don't go that way because if you were chasing me and we went in this direction, I would act like this. And that's how Failsafe is going to act. And you see that kind of stuff play out. So it is really fun. I do really like what I'm seeing in the book. Art style, it's Jorge Ramirez, man. It's going to be amazing. It's absolutely brilliant what he's able to do with this art. What I like is the tone of the whole book right here. Basically, we have a really beaten, broken down Batman who is completely down and out, basically. He's watching all of his friends get their asses kicked, and he's got to do something. And so this, towards the end of this book, is like that rallying back up, getting all that strength, getting some more allies on his side, and he's basically seeing all the carnage that Failsafe is putting Gotham through right now. And so the next couple of issues is going to be that big Batman returns to Gotham to take it back over kind of issue. So that's going to be really exciting. I can't wait to see how that one turns out. The Batman, man, if you're not reading this one, I think we're 3 issues into Chip's run right now, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was 26, 27, 28. Pick up 26, 27, and then get 28. It's a really good read. All right, well, that was it with the big 2. We're going to hop over into the big 3. We're going to go into Image next. What a cool book this was. We have Junkyard Joe, issue number 1 from Jeff Johns and Gary Frank. And so I was really looking forward to this book a lot because it's basically a spinoff of Geiger. If you read Geiger the other year, I think it was a year ago at least, That was an amazing book, and we're going to get several spin-offs in that universe, which I'm really looking forward to, in Junkyard Joe being one of the first ones in here. What a cool introduction to this character. And they do it in a very organic kind of a way, kind of a surprising way. We're back in the 70s right now. We're right in the middle of war, and basically we're touching base with this platoon right here who's going on this specific mission, and we have the new guy coming in, right? He's kind of mysterious. He doesn't talk a whole lot. It was orders from the top kind of thing to have this soldier added to the platoon, and they go on their mission. They quickly realize this is no ordinary soldier. He does something really, really brave and courageous, and it actually reveals that he is essentially a robot, and the whole rest of the issue is basically them adapting to that because they didn't expect that, and they get into a lot of trouble as well, and they learn to respect this robot because of what the robot does to kind of get them out of sticky situations. Now, Gary Frank's art style in here is very much like Geiger. It's got that real cool dark art style to it. I'll give you a little hint of what you got going on in here. There's some just amazing panels in here that really show off a whole lot of action, a lot of sadness, a lot of drama. There's a lot of emotions in this book. You get to know a lot of these characters, and not a lot of them make it out, and so it's a really impactful issue, I would say. It's a really good first introduction, and there's also some heaviness and some gravity to how the robot acts and how the different commanders and presidents and war people back in the States and the different engineers and whatnot, how they perceive the robot's actions and what it actually means for the war in general. It's actually a really, really cool book with a lot of gravity to it, a lot of emotion to it. I cannot wait to see what else is going to come out from Junkyard Joe, and I'm really looking forward to the other spinoffs. So whenever they do eventually come out, check this book out. It's really good. All right, we have two Dark Horse books coming up next. The first one's by Scott Snyder and Francisco Francavilla, and this is Night of the Ghoul, issue number 1, a Comixology original. It's a book that I don't really remember pre-ordering, but I remember Scott Snyder put out a bunch of Comixology books a little while ago, and so this is actually one of those, making it to print, luckily, because this book is actually really fun. Definitely puts you into the mood. Interesting premise. We basically have this father-son combo. The father came across this one mysterious movie about this ghoul, and essentially the movie is about these different soldiers in World War I who came across this ghoul that was feasting on the dead, things like that, eating bones and everything. And it basically possesses one of the soldiers, and he comes home, and there's a lot of drama with the family related to that. What we also learn in here is we learn a little bit about the director of the film. And so basically it's this father-son team trying to meet up with that director to get some more juicy tidbits about the ghoul and the monster and the rest of the movie and things like that. And we learn that things are a little bit more real than these father-son were led to believe, and so we explore what that means inside this book. And you know, it definitely gets creepy pretty quick. It's a pretty interesting read. It's a little bit longer than your standard comic as well, and I think it was appropriate because it takes a little bit of time to develop this story, and I think the pacing was perfect throughout it to kind of reveal what was really going on in here. I'll give you a little hint of what the art style is like. We see that father in here, and we're talking to the director over here who's kind of been hospitalized in different areas throughout the world, and so he's like a burn victim, and so he's kind of telling his story right there. And he's coming to the realization that, hey, we're all kind of doomed. This ghoul's going to be coming after us, and you're screwed, and so is your son. So it's a pretty cool book, and I'm definitely glad I had it on the pull list. I kind of forgot this one was even coming out, but I'm glad I got it. I think there's going to be a couple more issues at least from this. I don't know exactly how long it is, but it definitely is open-ended towards the end of this, so I'm assuming there's going to be more to it. Let me know if you read it, because this was actually a pretty surprisingly fun, ghoulish, great for this time of year book. Pretty cool. All right, and the last book we read from Dark Horse was Minor Threats, issue number 2 from Patton Oswalt, also co-written by Jordan Blum. We have Scott Hepburn on the art. Very interesting book. I kind of not dismissed the first issue. I read it, and it took a little bit of time for it to kind of gain a little bit of steam, I thought, from a narrative perspective, but it really turned the tide and had just like a fresh, exciting feel towards the end of the book, and the cliffhanger was pretty fun, I thought, too. People are comparing this one to kind of like a Watchmen kind of a thing. I think that's a pretty fair comparison, because these are essentially like gutter heroes and villains kind of teaming up together to solve this like greater threat before things escalate completely out of control. We have the Stick Man. Essentially, he killed Kid Dusk, which is basically like this universe's Robin in a way. And so we have this universe's Batman kind of on the prowl right now, trying to seek revenge on that and trying to figure out what's going on. So all the heroes are on high alert right now, and they're really kind of terrorizing all the different towns and really kind of going above and beyond to kind of get the truth and figure out what's going on. So we have all these like D-list villains teaming up, trying to figure out where the Stickman is. They do a lot of creative, interesting detective work, especially in the very beginning of this book, because this one villain, I can't remember half these guys' names because there's so many weird ones in here. This guy called Brain Tease, he's essentially like the Riddler almost. In this universe, he's basically sitting down reenacting the daily life of the Stickman, so he can basically see what his thought process might be and which might lead to where he's hiding right now. It's a very cool like first 5 pages. And if you read the book, you know exactly what I'm talking about, but it's very funny. This guy's got a very interesting power set. But basically they find out where Stickman is hiding, or presumably where he's hiding. It's apparently at this real fancy nightclub, and they go there. There's all these interesting characters in there. All hell kind of breaks loose yet again. And there's some big battles and whatnot. And we see like that they're like Batman type character as well. And so he's kind of taken out all his anger on the Stickmen. And so really interesting book. This is actually a little bit more deep than I thought it was going to be. I didn't have super high expectations for this, and it's exceeding it for sure. I'll give you a little hint about what the art style is like in here. If I can find an appropriate page. This is actually a funny page, and this guy is actually kind of featured in most of the issue here. He's the guy who figures out the clues to lead them into the next step. And so this is them kind of approaching the bouncer at this nightclub, and they get rejected pretty fast. But yeah, pretty cool book. It's got lots of action inside of it. It's actually drawn really well. Again, it kind of feels like a Watchmen vibe. It's actually pretty cool. So I would recommend this one for sure. It's meeting my expectations. And yeah, I can't wait to kind of see what's going on in this one. This is issue number 2. Still a great time to jump on. Check this one out. Well, guys, that's everything that I read this week. So I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know what your favorite books were down below in the comments. And while you're down there, like, subscribe, share, hit that bell notification to be alerted of future videos. We'll see y'all in the comments.